And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great coach, Mike Candrea. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll jump right into it. Talk about some of your coaching philosophies that helped you become successful.
Well, that's a full laundry list there. I think that the first thing I always talk about is just having a passion for what you do. And I always tell people I've never worked a day in my life because I'm doing something I love to do. I've always been in love with the bat and ball game, and um, grew up playing baseball, coached baseball in junior college, and then got really talked into coaching softball. And here I am, 37, 40 years later, doing something that has been lots of fun and very fulfilling. Um, Lots of ups and downs. So, as far as the mental game, it definitely teaches you a lot about what it takes to stick to the process and be successful. But I always go back to when I was a young coach. The first thing that I would, if you asked the bottom of my pyramid or the foundation of my pyramid, it would probably have been skill set. I'd go out and recruit the very best players that could play the game at a high level. And if you ask me that same question today, the foundation of my pyramid is character. Learned a long time ago that character, the piece of having high character kids, can solve a lot of problems. And truly, when you're talking about being committed to the process, and being mentally tough and doing all the things that it takes to be successful, high character people have a big advantage. And to me, I think that's been my biggest change over the years, is realizing that culture is a big part. We all talk about culture and how do you develop culture, and I think culture is much easier to develop with high character people than it is with less.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I see a lot of coaches make that development over time. Of course, we want to recruit the talent, we want to get the best athletes in there, but and that's what we're all about, using sports as a vehicle to build virtue. If you're a virtuous person, you have that character, you'll be successful at anything you do.
Absolutely. And the great thing about softball, I learned a long time ago that softball is going to come to an end much quicker than life. And so my job is not just to coach them for 4 years, but to be a part of their life forever and give them the skill set that it takes for them to find success in something they have a passion for.
Exactly. Exactly. That's where you need the character, you need the virtue. Now talk about that, because I'm sure a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes, especially young athletes, younger coaches, they don't see it like that. What would be the case? How do you make a case for that for them?
Well, if you're looking at coaching the game that I coach, which is softball, and the first thing that comes to mind, and even as a player, was your ability to handle failure. And so I think the one thing I've learned over the years is um, I like to call it mental stability. Um, Understanding that it's going to be a challenge. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. But when I was coaching the Olympic team, it just kind of hit me between the eyes, because every day I would go out there and I'd look at these 17, 18 kids and go, what makes them so special? We knew they were good players, but truthfully, at the end of the day, it was their emotional stability that they brought to the field every day. Never got too high, never got too low. Obviously, at 27 years old, which was very unique, because for the first time we were able to see our softball athletes play the game at 27, 28 years old. The thing I realized is they had the mental stability, they had the physical stability of the game, and they had the emotional stability of the game. So for the first time, they had all the proper pieces that you need to be able to play a game at a high level and be able to stick to the process. And to me, I thought that was very um, eye opening for me, is to really wonder what makes these kids so successful. And everyone has physical skills, but it's being able to handle the challenges and having the right perspective of what's it going to take for me to be successful. And part of that is being able to fail and be able to fail forward, and to be able to detach yourself from the big picture. That's another very big gift, is being able to be process oriented. But we always talk about playing a game one pitch at a time, but that's awfully hard to do. But I think for many kids, the game sometimes gets to be where it's life threatening. Everything that happens in the game can change their whole outlook on life and everything else. And truthfully, for me, I guess that's my biggest challenge, is trying to get them beyond that, to be able to be where their feet are every day. I always say, be where your feet are. And to me, a big part of being successful is the kids that I have, they are very emotionally stable and they're very competitive. If there's two elements that I would say are very important in our environment and our culture, it is the competitive piece and it's the emotional stability piece.
Makes a lot of sense. Easy to say, not
Yep.
as easy to do, right? And it's like getting comfortable being in that world of paradox where, like you said, they are highly competitive, but at the same time, they're not too sucked into the outcome. They are where their feet are at. They're staying in the present moment. So it's a little bit of a balancing act there, and being able to shift your weight where I want to win, I hate to lose, but I'm not attached to the outcome. And
Right.
also what you said before about passion being so important, but at the same time, emotional stability. And a lot of people might confuse the two, where if they're playing the game with a lot of emotion, that's not what you mean by passion.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, especially in our game, it's a game of relaxed skills. So you got to really define what that emotion is all about. And to me, it's having strength under stress. Being able to handle stress, but being able to have the tools that you need in your toolbox to be able to handle when things are not going well for you.
Right. And how do you develop those tools, that skill set, that mindset and emotional stability?
Well, for me, I always go back to the recruiting piece. Being able to go into the home and find out who this kid has been surrounded by in their life. And many a times you'll get a pretty good glimpse, because I think that's the biggest piece with me, is trying to define, what this kid is all about as quick as I can. And not just on the field, but off the field, and what makes them tick. And a lot of times it's the home, it's their upbringing. It's,
Sure.
the competitive kids are usually have grown up in a household that has some competition, whether it's an older brother or whatever it may be, a dad that's played the game. And so I think it's a piece that people either have or they don't have. And it's hard in our game to tell young women that it's okay to be competitive, because it can be misconstrued. And so the other piece of the puzzle is surrounding them with other people that are competitive, which allows them to feel comfortable being competitive.
Uh, so that's a good point right there. Being able to, handling men and women differently. That a good piece, that thing that you found over the years, is putting women around other competitive women, and this way they see it's okay. This is par for the course. So in order to be socially acceptable, right, which a lot of times it's that fitting in with the group, they're around like-minded people, or people that you want them to be like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And for me, the pillars of our program, characters are number one on the list, but having discipline to
Right.
work through the process, being emotionally stable, being competitive. And the other thing that I found with um, coaching the female athlete is being able to embrace holding other people accountable in our culture. I think it's so important in a team concept that you're not scared to hold each other accountable, and to look at that in a positive way instead of a negative way.
Right.
Because most of the time when you tell someone that they're maybe not doing something correct, they take it in a very negative way. But we try to turn that around to where, we care about you enough that we're going to hold you accountable, because that's going to be the key to our success down the road.
That makes a lot of sense, because the people who are ultimately successful can hold themselves accountable, and the teams that are successful, they understand that concept of uh, fraternal correction, that it's okay. We want one another to be correcting each other, not in a critical way, but that
Right.
we have a goal. We're living to a certain standard. It's comfortable. So how do you foster that kind of environment where it is trust, it is that love, not always like, you don't always like the person, but you have that trusting environment that we are going to be honest with one another.
Well, I think it starts at the top. I think a lot of times, as coaches, we talk about the mental game, and sometimes we have to look in the mirror and say, are we really living that too? Because that has a huge influence on young people. But I think giving them the ability, entitling them to be able to hold each other accountable in a positive way, I think is a process, is part of the process. Everyone walks into a college setting, and they really think that their seniors are the ones that are the leaders. And sometimes it's not your seniors all the time that are your best leaders. It could be a freshman, a sophomore, or a junior. And so that is one of the first hurdles, is getting them to understand that we're all in this together and we all have something to bring to the table. And, we do one of the things that has been dynamic for me is doing some work with the program. And I think taking some stuff from the Navy SEALs, where they're in the heat of the battle, and how it's important for them to accomplish the mission, they have to hold each other accountable. And I think that really kind of resonated with our kids when we went through that process, to make them know that it's okay. We all have differences, but at the end of the day, we have one common goal that we're trying to work towards. And it's going to take all of us to make sure that each and every one of us do our part to hold each other accountable. And, our program, the standards are very high. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having high standards. But again, that's a process that you have to go through to get kids to understand what it takes to be able to do that day in and day out.
Right. And like you said, it starts at the top. So if leadership is there, and we have our heads right as coaches, then that trickles down to our athletes. Same thing with the leaders of your team, not necessarily the older people, but sometimes it's the younger ones who are living right. They're doing the right things. They're putting forth the effort, and they're really being about it rather than just saying it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not how you act, it's how you react. It's that's the one thing I look at with young kids, is how do they react to situations? And to me, that is really a stable for mental toughness, because people that quote are mentally tough are able to fail, but they're able to fail forward. They're able to stay
Right.
positive. They're able to know what they need to do to make that next correction. Or, if they're in competition and all of a sudden we used to use the green, yellow, red light, where it's okay to get in the yellow, but the thing is, when you're in the yellow, you either got a choice of either getting back to the green or going into the red. And I think that takes time. It takes a database that you develop as you play the game. So the older you are and the more experience you have, the larger your database is. Therefore, you have more experience to draw from.
Right. How do you shorten that time? Because ideally we want to get them to that point as quickly as possible. Right.
I think a lot of it is just the sooner that you can understand each individual and what makes them tick, um, the the more chances you have at shortening that time. I think, I mean, that's trying to get kids to be honest with their failures and being able to identify them and to not sugarcoat everything and to have those hard discussions, I think are really important as far as expediting that process of it's everyone would love to have a bunch of seniors playing the game all the time, but you know what? Those freshmen have to come in and be able to contribute. And to me, the freshmen, the sooner I can understand them and I can help them understand what makes them tick, the quicker that happens.
Makes sense. And I would assume that the people who understand themselves better, generally speaking, they'd be the ones who do a better job reacting because they know how to keep themselves in the green, or when they get to the yellow, it's okay, but let's keep moving in the right direction now. Let's make the right choice.
Right.
So
And yeah, and you know, the most of the time, the kids that are able to focus, you know, I mean, we talk about focus, and focus is very tough, especially in our game when you're out there for 3 hours, you
yeah,
know. But truthfully, the kids that have that ability to be where their feet are, to stay focused, to take it one pitch at a time, are the ones that are successful, you know. And that is a process that it takes experience. You know, I mean, it's like coaching the Olympic team versus coaching your college team. They do things at a different pace, you know, much more efficient. But a lot of it is just the experience that they have, and the mindset that they have. You know, it was pretty interesting coaching the Olympic team that, you know, you practice for 4 years for one competition that lasts a week. And so you can't wait for that week to put yourself in that Olympic arena, or else you're going to fail. You have to find a way each and every day to put your mindset in that Olympic arena when you're practicing to prepare yourself. And the athletes that were very special were the kids that were able to do that. You know, no matter whether they were on the practice field or they were in the Olympic arena, they had the same look and the same approach. And to me, that's a gift. You know, that's the stability that we talk about, the mental stability.
definitely. That was very much stressed by my college coach, who actually brought in the United States Olympic Training Center manual for sports psychology. And it said, how are you going to make practices similar to a competition and vice versa, making competitions similar to practice?
Right.
So your practice and your performance, you shouldn't really see much of a difference.
No. And you know, I always tell our kids, you know, the first thing you got to do is check your breathing. And if your breathing changes, then you know darn well you haven't probably done the work to be prepared for that moment. So um yeah, it was a lot of fun to see um how great athletes go about their craft each and every day. And it's you know, it's their ability to focus, it's their ability to stay in the moment. Um, it's their ability to fail and be able to look at that as not life threatening, but another opportunity to get better and to conquer that failure. I mean, there's how you perceive failure is a big part of this whole thing.
Sure, these it's great because these little points that you're making, that could go on for another 45 minutes. That's a very important thing. The way we it's called the way we appraise the situation, or just the way we interpret that failure. It's the same thing. The way we interpret nerves, that has a big impact, not just the objective situation, but our mental response to it. So that's great. I hope the people who watch are sitting there with a notebook, because they get a lot from everything that you're saying there. Uh, Talk about another point that I was thinking with. You said it's not so much the action, but how we react. How should the best softball players be reacting now to the COVID situation and the uncertainties? What do you recommend they do during this time?
Well, I think I always tell our kids control the controllables. You know, there's a lot of things that we can't control during COVID, and there are things that we can. So um, let's look at the things that we can control, and let's do a better job of controlling those things. And you know, I think it's done a lot of things for all of us. I mean, we had one of our best falls this past fall during COVID. And I think a lot of it was a lot of these kids getting back to, hey, I get to practice today. I get to play the game that I love, because sometimes you don't know how much you miss something until it's gone. And so I think that has made a huge impact on some kids, um, because these kids are playing a lot of games. I mean, you know, when you look at softball and travel ball, they play a ton of games. And the one thing I always said is, you know, at the college level, we practice more than we play. So you have to understand the process, um, each and every day. Where in travel ball, they play more than they practice. And so I think at this moment right now, okay, we can't play, but what can we do to help ourselves get better? Whether it's in the mental game, whether it's the physical part of the game, or what can I do in the things that I have right now? And I think the kids that have come back, I thought our kids came back and they were very prepared, and maybe that was their outlet, is to be able to go out and work out and do the little things that it takes.
Right? We forget sometimes that we get to play
Oh,
as opposed to, oh, I have to play. No, you don't have to play, and life could pull this opportunity from you at any moment, as we
ab-
just saw.
yeah, and we've just found that out. It's amazing how quickly we felt in March when when our whole season came to a halt. It was like, no, this isn't real. And then as the months went on, it was, this is real. And it's kind of like COVID right now. Some people think it's not a big thing. Some people think it's a huge thing. And you get up in the morning, and the one thing that I've tried to do is keep a routine. I mean, that's the big thing. And I think the mind and the body work together. So what can I do to help those two things during the times that we have right now, and keep moving forward?
Absolutely. And like you said, there's always a way to get better. And that's one of the big things that I've learned from doing these interviews with these highly successful coaches and highly successful athletes. They're saying the same things, that whenever there's adversity, there's a great opportunity. Like, now is the time to jump levels on the competition, or now's the time to catch up to people who are maybe a little bit ahead of you. And there's always something you could be doing to get better mentally, physically, your nutrition, your conditioning, the technique, the skills, the drills. There's so much you could be doing as long as you have that positive mindset and you focus on those things.
Yeah, and I call it readiness for change. And that's kind of what we're going through right now, is how ready are we we're going to have to be flexible. Even right now, trying to look at our 56 game schedule, things are going to happen.
Right.
And I think the one thing that this going through this process has made us all understand how flexible we really need to be. And that's really hard sometimes for athletes that are and coaches that are so used to planning and having a schedule. And now all of a sudden we have to have a schedule, but we better have schedule A, schedule B, and schedule C. And that's different. That really is.
Right. We get in a groove and we forget that that groove can be interrupted at any time. That's why I have seen athletes, after they've gotten an injury, or maybe they were out because of mono or some kind of sickness, then when they come back, they were better than before. Of course, a lot of people, it goes the other way, because mentally they never recover, not even so much physically, but mentally they have that renewed approach to the sport. Well, it's in the same way, like you're saying there, it's a life skill to be able
Yep.
to adapt, to roll with the punches, and never get too comfortable to the point where this can't get taken away from me. I have
Exactly.
my main plan, and then I have my contingency plans. If anything, this time has taught us that.
Yeah, I remember going back when we were getting ready for the Olympics in 2004. We were playing in the Dominican Republic, and I take a lot of pride in my organization skills and having practices ready to go. And I remember having this great practice plan, and we show up at the field, and I said, "Where's the practice field?" And they pointed over where this pasture was, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, now what am I going to be able to do? And here's this practice plan. I rip it up and figured out that we had a couple of patches of dirt and we could maybe do some hitting. And we had a couple of donkeys in left field we had to protect. So it became kind of fun to know that, if you better be flexible, you better be ready for change. And I think the good athletes are always in that mindset, because nothing stays the same. It's either going to get better, it's going to get worse. You
That's
know,
it. And that's what we're all about. Exactly what you're saying there. Using softball as a vehicle to improve, obviously, in sports, in school, your career, and in life. That's great stuff, Mike. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Great talking. Like I said, I hope our viewers, when this airs, that you take notes with that notebook, always write it down. You can't just keep it in your head, but all those great pieces of information.
Hey, you never stop learning. That's for darn sure. It's the one piece that, I always told people, they always asked what my philosophy was. And I said, well, the first thing is I want to be competent at what I do. And in order to be competent, you have to be a student of the game. I wanted to try to be consistent, because in performance, consistency is a valuable piece of it. But I think at the end of the day, the third thing and the most important thing is I wanted kids to know that I cared about them. And so in today's world, we have to coach the entire person, not just their physical skills, but, right now, especially during COVID, the big thing is how are these kids really handling it, and how are they doing, and spending some time to make sure they are okay mentally.
Right.
So a coach has a big job today, and I take it as an honor to be able to do what I do. And I think at the end of the day, we want to make an impact on young kids' lives, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we leave them with tools and skills that they can be successful in whatever they choose. So it's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. It's a great way to end it. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it. Excellent stuff.
And you take care of yourself.
Okay, you too.
Happy holidays.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.